Dana Denha here, and this is Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Every March, our annual film festival brings stories, visual arts, and unforgettable imagery to screens and gallery spaces throughout Ann Arbor. Artists travel from far and wide to be part of this world-renowned celebration of film and art. Joining me is David Olson, multimedia artist with the installation Grafica Harmolodica at the 2024 Ann Arbor Film Festival. Welcome to the show, David.
Welcome. It's actually Grafica Harmolodica.
Oh, well, David, we'll get deeper into that in a minute. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your schooling, and what led you to being a multimedia artist?
Well, I was actually born and raised here in Ann Arbor, and so my knowledge at the film festival goes back to when I was a kid and used to see these strange-looking posters hanging up in my kitchen. My mother would tape them up on the kitchen wall or, stick them to the refrigerator. So I was always interested in that. And when I finally realized that this was what the festival was, this International Film Festival, I thought, wow, that's really, that's pretty interesting to have something like that in town. So that really was, believe it or not, one of my first sort of inclinations or sort of, catalyst to start thinking about doing something in media. I lived in New York for in the NYC area for 15 or 16 years, and that's really where I started getting into doing video and photography. And then that sort of led into everything blending and doing this multimedia thing, which I'll be doing for the festival this year with this project.
Yeah, I think the way art is transforming is really into like making many artists multimedia artists. I feel like you have to know how to do a lot of stuff to be an artist.
Yeah, you can. I mean, there's still plenty of artists who just pick up a brush and and paint, or pick up an old school SLR film camera and take photos, or make things out of paper, and that's great. In fact, I love still doing those sort of physical things too. But it's true. I like to say sometimes that media is media is media. So at this point, with uh, you know 30 years or so of access to digital media in a way that you could relatively easily make art out of it. It's true. It's the sort of line of what's conventional art or what's digital art or multimedia art really gets blurred quite a bit. I actually started doing this sort of projection live performance thing because I had a lot of musician friends in New York, and I've always been really into music in general and jazz in particular, and I wanted to be able to. For I always felt a little bit left out, that I don't play an instrument, but so doing this live video performance or live visual performance allowed me to actually jam with them. So I would mix these visuals live, and they would be projected in a rehearsal space or a club or a loft party or whatever. So that's really how I started getting into doing this true live multimedia practice, was to be able to do that with music. So to sort of jam, to create it not by myself alone in my studio, where you think of what you want to make and then you sort of painstakingly put it together. These video images, these motion graphics are really created on the fly while I'm listening to the music. So it gives it a real different feel.
Well, I also think like as a filmmaker, artist, it's really nice to have friends that are musicians because a lot of times when you create something, you want to have a music bed with it, but you have to deal with this non-copyrighted music situation. But if you have friends and you create this relationship with musicians, then they are going to allow you to use their music in your work as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. That's a good sort of segue into this actual project, is that's exactly what happened. One of my friends in New York, Val, who's an excellent musician, keyboard player and vocalist, and she helped me a lot in New York. She's one of the people I could call and say, hey, I need a funky ass bass line for something I'm doing, or do you have any tracks that I could use and play around with or do something to? And so we already had this sort of working relationship, but it had been a little bit one-sided with doing the sort of things that, like you're saying, allow me to have some music to work with. And of course, if there's ever a budget, then the musician gets paid too. But since it was a friendly thing, I didn't need to have a budget to come up with. And so once I was finally helping her out, I was doing some video work for her on a music project. I think it was a 9/11 memorial thing. It was just a year or two after 9/11 in New York. And when we were done, she said, "Do you want to go see Ornette Coleman play tonight?" And I thought, yeah, where's he playing and when does it start and how much are tickets? And she said, it starts in about a half an hour. It's in Harlem at his recording studio and it's a party, so there's no cost, so, let's hop on. We hopped on the A train and headed up to Harlem. And, a half hour later, I found myself in Harmolodic Studio, which is Ornette Coleman's, who's a, fantastic, sort of the father of avant-garde jazz in the United States, or really, in general. And so it was that sort of reciprocal relationship with musicians is what led me to being in the room there, and then realizing I had my camera and got permission to shoot it. And so that's really the basis of this project.
Well, David's installation performance piece will be part of the opening festivities at the 62nd Ann Arbor Film Festival. Watch a short video tease of Grafica Harmolodica. I'm here with multimedia artist David Olson. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Grafica Harmolodica is and how did it come about 20 years after the original performance?
Yeah, it's sort of crazy. So as I said, I ended up by happenstance, one of the, just one of those crazy New York stories where I found myself in the recording studio, Harmolodic studio. I realized I had my camera and was talking to Ornette's son, Donardo, who's the absolutely fantastic drummer on this, and had been drumming with Ornette since he was 7 years old, I think. Um, and so I asked him permission to shoot, and he went and talked to his dad and said, "You can." He says, "Thumbs up. You can do whatever you want." So I had this footage because I figured I have to do. I'm here. I have my camera. Like this is. But I had no idea what I was going to do with it. So I ended up doing nothing with it for 20 years. And then found the footage and started playing around with it. Um, and at first I was just going to create a video, like do a quick little, put something together and make it a relatively traditional, but hopefully a little bit funky or psychedelic or, in keeping with the avant-garde vibe of the music. But I ended up really getting drawn to these images, to these still images that I was just pulling by stopping the frames. I would pull a single frame, and in fact, that's one of them in the background. They're sort of tilted, but I really like these images that were almost like abstract expressionism. So I was sort of torn between, well, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to turn this into a photography show? Do I want to do a full length 20 minutes, almost documentary of that recording? Well, it wasn't really a recording session. It was in the recording studio, but of them playing at a party, a private party. And I was playing around with different ideas and started doing these live performances in my studio just to start getting these images. I'd play the music and do these composition, put these things together. And then out of a conversation with Leslie of the film festival, the executive director of the film festival, we started talking about the possibility of doing a multimedia thing, and that room became available in North Quad that has these beautiful six monitors into the wall and these big projection spaces and space on the walls to hang the photos. And so it just sort of fell together. I just thought that's perfect. So it just it very slowly and then very quickly over the course of 20 years fell into place.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about just being able, like getting that footage 20 years ago and like not even knowing what it would ever happen, if anything would ever happen with it. And then going back in time basically and creating this beautiful piece of art.
Every once in a while I was playing around with this and editing, I sort of hit me, and I'm like, I'm sort of jamming with Ornette Coleman, and the two other musicians, Donardo and Tony Longa, who's a really accomplished bass player, a classically trained, I think a Juilliard bass player and very in demand in the classical scene, and also would play and recorded with Ornette Coleman. So it was just it was just a once in a lifetime opportunity to work with those musicians, and yeah, in a weird way to be jamming with them 20 years later.
Does a lot of your work revolve around music or just some of it?
Just some of it. I mean, I'm really drawn to to the similarities in music and in visual arts. For me, really, composition is is the central piece to visual art, whether it's something I'm making or whether it's what I appreciate of other people's work. That's sort of the beginning and the end. Like if it doesn't have an interesting composition, if it doesn't, I'm probably not very interested. And music obviously is all about composition as well. So by doing this live performance thing where I'm actually creating these new images to the music, it lets me blend the two, which I really love. But even when you take the music away, like with the still photographs, um, I still feel there's some energy of of those musical compositions is still there, even in the most abstract images that you can't really tell that it's a musician or even a human being, or some of them you can see. You see clearly an instrument, or in this case, it's a silhouette, even though it's pretty abstract. Um, but I still feel like that musical composition and the energy from the live music creeps into it. But no, not all my stuff it has to do with music, but I do feel sort of a connection or affinity to musical composition and visual composition.
Can you tell me how you're sort of creating this on the fly for the performance aspect of it when you're going to be in the North Quad?
Yeah, so basically I'm going to be set up with my laptop and plugged into their system, their video system. There'll be 6 monitors on the wall that will be playing pre-recorded things like what sort of basically the sort of thing that we just saw. That was a little segment of some of that. And there'll be the four or five 3 by 5 foot photographs, so pretty large photographs on the wall. And then during the performance, I'll be projecting I believe on both sides of the space onto the wall up high. It's really set up nicely, this place. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to play the music that was being played that in the studio, and then I will be remixing the visuals live, which basically means I'll have the video that I shot of them playing, but then I also, through digital technology, I'll also be compositing it, is what we call it, or layering it with up to 7 different layers of media, other videos, photographs, graphic elements. And so I'll just be sort of, jamming along with it and creating a new visual composition that goes along with the musical composition.
Wow, how cool. It sounds really like it almost sounds like it's like a fun thing for you to do in the time. You're the artist and you're creating music in real time almost.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it was really the first time I did it, which was, more than 20 years ago, it was 25 years ago or so. It was really a revelation because I'd been experimenting with this software, which is basically VJ software, video jockey software. If you
Hmm.
go to, I don't know, I don't really hang out in clubs anymore, but for a while it was sort of a thing in clubs where you would sometimes have a VJ who was not just playing something interesting or beautiful or whatever you were looking for on the walls of the club or on a screen, but was actually creating something new. So it's basically that sort of software, and I was playing around with it but not using it live. And the first time I did it with some musician friends, it was really a revelation. It was I mean, I found I could really react immediately to the music they were playing. And when we took the first break, I we talked and I said, how was that for you guys? And they said the same thing. They were like, yeah, we could, we were kind of jamming off your images. And so when it's a live band and I'm doing it live, it's really something special. This is a little different since it's recorded, but it's at the same time, it was played live and I was there when it was live. So it is exciting. I mean, it really is a performance. I mean, what is going to come out, although the things on the monitors are similar to that, what I'm going to produce that night is going to be unique. It will be born that night of the performance.
Yeah, it's basically like you're creating music over time in history with someone that's now passed, which makes it even sort of neater in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think about it too much because, it's a little kind of just think like this is just, I'm just having fun with this and have an opportunity to create some visuals, with these amazing musicians, even though they're not in the room with me. And I think it's just a great way. I'm really happy to be able to sort of kick off the festival season with that performance for the, I guess now 62nd Ann Arbor Film Festival.
Yeah, so it's the 62nd this year, but you actually created a trailer for the 60th, which is a big anniversary year for the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Let's watch the trailer that David made. We're back with David Olson. David, you have an established relationship with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with the Ann Arbor Film Festival and how you became the person that created one of the trailers for the 60th?
Well, so I moved. So like I said, I'd been living in the NYC area for 15, 16 years. And when I came back, I met Leslie at a um, some sort of a networking event or something. Just someone introduced me to her, and we immediately found out that we both worked in the same with the same sort of in the same media. She herself is a multimedia artist, among other things. I mean, her hat that she wears mostly now is an administrator for the festival, but she's an accomplished artist
Oh, she's
herself.
most definitely an artist. We've had her on the show in the past, and she showed some of her film work, and I was very impressed.
Yeah, she's great. So we immediately, and she'd done the same sort of live performance where you're layering and compositing media. So we immediately started talking about that. And on the spot, she asked me, she said, "Well, do you want to do one of the after parties? We're looking for someone to do, some sort of a performance or visuals for an after party." So pretty quickly after I got back to Ann Arbor, I connected to the festival in that way. Um, and so I just been a little sort of in the orbit, for that. And then for that trailer, I also did another a few years after that first after party I did. I put in a proposal for a what they call their off the screen series, where it's these projects that aren't traditional films that are either a performance or an installation, or sometimes it's a talk or a workshop or something. So I put in my proposal for that. That was the Radical Democracy Project, and that was at the Ann Arbor. That was an installation at the Ann Arbor Art Center. So I had a little bit of a relationship established, and I just knew they were looking for trailers, and I submitted my application, so to speak, or whatever. However, I can't remember exactly how you did it, and they gave me the green light, so I got to go ahead. And that was really the moment that I said I grew up in Ann Arbor and knew about the festival for years, and that was really sort of special to create a trailer for the 60th anniversary festival. And I used a bunch of old clips from over the years. We actually went in and digitized, played some of the old clear leader art that people had created over the years. People who came to the festival for many years were able to create these clear leader art, with magic markers and stuff, which would be shown at the festival. So we were in the basement of the old film festival office, and I was shooting them on the wall and recording them digitally, and then sort of mixed that into that trailer we just saw. So that's how that came about, and so it really felt like a nice sort of homecoming almost, and an homage to all the previous festivals as well.
I'm not originally from Ann Arbor. I moved here about 15, 16 years ago, but people that are from here are really like they love being townies. They love the town. Do you feel like Ann Arbor influences you as an artist?
Hmm. Well, I would say that my growing up here definitely did. I think as an adult, you're influenced a little. It's a little harder to get those to be affected in a deep way. I mean, in some ways, you're affected by everything you see or hear, or
Sure.
I mean, your flashing pinball machines behind you are giving me ideas. So, but definitely growing up here. I mean, growing up here, and like I say, really like knowing that this film, even before I ever attended, knowing that this experimental film festival was happening in my town, and that filmmakers from all around the world were coming, and there was definitely this feeling of possibility um, growing up here. And in the music scene, when I was growing up, the live music scene was really happening. I mean, there were 5 or 6 places all within walking distance downtown that that 5 or 7 nights a week had live music that you could go dance to. And they were local bands and they were not cover bands. You know, these were people playing
Oh
original
yeah.
music. So there was a lot of that. In the Ozone Parade, that was a big early influence. It was just a bunch of the, Ann Arbor freaks dressing up. It was in taking over the street, basically. It was sort of like a mobile Burning Man,
Hmm.
50 years before. So being in Ann Arbor, especially growing up, definitely affected me. And again, really just by this idea of possibility. People were always doing these things that seemed a little bit absurd, but were incredibly creative and inspiring and often beautiful or at least weird enough to be interesting. And so, yeah, it really did. It did affect me for sure.
Well, David, we're just about out of time, but before we go, why don't you tell people why they should support the Ann Arbor Film Festival as a viewer, an artist, and just a lover of art?
Great question. Well, the film festival is known as an experimental film festival, an avant-garde or experimental film festival, and has been for over 60 years now. And that word experimental is so important for an artist. I mean, it gives, whether you're a filmmaker or someone doing an installation like I am, or whatever your medium is, because that word experimental, an experiment means you don't know what's going to happen. If you did know exactly what was going to happen, it wouldn't be an experiment. You would just be presenting something. So this creates a space and has been maintaining a space for over 60 years for people to experiment visually, to come up to push the boundaries on moving images and art. And that's really important. It's important for the artists. It's important for the people who want to come and see that. And that's obviously a smaller audience than for mainstream popular culture, but it provides an audience or it provides a space for the audience to come and get that that creative energy, and it also ends up affecting mainstream culture. It's by having people who have these spaces and contexts and festivals and possibilities to push the boundaries and to have an audience for that's waiting, that wants that, that's looking to see something new and different or just a little bit strange or odd. By pushing those boundaries, that eventually trickles into mainstream culture as well. So everyone who attends the festival, people who support, whether you support by paying for your ticket or giving the festival money or just by showing up, it really it lets you put your finger on the pulse of really what's happening, even if you don't like most of the films. I mean, I always tell people, it's like I probably only really like maybe 15% of the films I see at the festival. Just like when I lived in New York and I'd go to the galleries and walk around Chelsea, I probably only really liked 15 or 20%. But what a great gift to be able to see what artists are making right now and pushing the edge. And that's exactly what the film festival does. Plus, it's just a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, these are people who are making oftentimes very fun, not always, sometimes it's very serious, but sometimes, there's a lot of whimsy in the
Oh
festival.
yeah.
So, yeah, so it's a great time. It supports the arts, and you get to see really creative people pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Well, thank you, David, for being on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. I'm happy to have been here, and I look forward to seeing the show, and hopefully we'll see you and some of your viewers at the festival.
To watch this and other CTN series, visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. I'm Dana Denhoff for Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival.